I used to think all nuts were good for me, until one morning I couldn't taste my coffee, and I couldn't remember why. My name is Eugene Walker. I'm 77 years old, retired, and living in a small wooden cabin just outside Montpelier, Vermont. I used to be a nutritionist, taught at the local college for over 2 decades, helped hundreds of students understand the science of food, but none of that prepared me for what happened last winter. It started simple. A strange metallic taste in my mouth. I figured it was the new toothpaste or maybe the cold, dry air, but then I noticed my appetite slipping. I stopped feeling hungry. Food lost its pleasure. Then came the brain fog. I'd walk into a room and forget why. I'd tell the same story twice in one conversation. My daughter looked at me one afternoon and said, "Dad, you okay?" And I was. Deep down, I knew something wasn't right. After a few restless nights, I sat down with a notebook and began listing everything I'd been eating. What changed? What stayed the same? One pattern stood out: pine nuts. I had started adding them to my lunch salads because I read they were heart-healthy. Turns out, for someone my age, they can trigger what's called pine mouth syndrome, a bitter taste that lingers for weeks. But worse than the taste was what it did to my memory, my energy, and how it interfered with the medications I'd been taking. That was the moment I stopped trusting assumptions and started doing my own research again. What I discovered shocked me. Not all nuts are good for seniors. Some are excellent, almost medicinal, but others, despite looking healthy, can quietly harm your liver, your brain, even your heart. So today, I'm not here to lecture. I'm here to talk, like I would with an old friend sitting beside me, 2 cups of tea on the table, snow falling outside. I'm going to walk you through the 4 nuts I'll never touch again, and the 4 that changed my life in the best ways possible. And if you're over 65 like me, you may want to listen closely. One small change could save you months, even years, of pain you never saw coming. Have you ever eaten something that made your mouth taste bitter for 3 whole weeks? I didn't think much of it at first. Just a strange aftertaste, like I'd licked the inside of an old tin can. I thought maybe it was the coffee, or the water filter, or just another one of those quirks that come with getting older, but the taste didn't go away. It stayed, all day, every day, and with it came something worse. I stopped feeling hungry. Nothing tasted right. I began skipping meals without meaning to. Within a month, I had lost over 9 pounds. At my age, that kind of weight loss isn't something you celebrate. It's something you worry about. Then came the sleepless nights. I'd lie in bed staring at the ceiling, my heart thudding a little harder than usual, my mind restless. I felt heavy without eating, and then strangely empty. I started wondering if it was something deeper, something emotional. Maybe it was the winter blues, or maybe depression sneaking in through a back door I didn't even know was open. I kept trying to trace it back. Was it the weather, the stress, something in my medication? That's when I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I opened my old food journals. I went back and looked at what I'd been eating since the symptoms began, and there it was, plain as day. I had been adding pine nuts to my lunch salads nearly every day. Just a small handful, a sprinkle. I'd read they were heart-healthy, good fats, full of antioxidants, and honestly, they made my dishes look fancy. But the truth was, those innocent little seeds were quietly disrupting everything inside me. Turns out, there's a condition called pine mouth syndrome. Mostly harmless in younger folks, but in older adults like us, it can trigger a cascade of problems. That metallic taste, it can last for weeks, and the longer it lingers, the less you eat. And when you stop eating, your body starts slipping. And if you're on medications like statins or antidepressants like I was, pine nuts can interfere and amplify those side effects. Nobody tells you this. You won't find it in most supermarket brochures or recipe blogs, but it's real, and I lived it. Looking back, I should have asked more questions before sprinkling those into my salad, but I didn't. And I paid the price. And here's the thing. You might have them in your pantry right now, sitting quietly in a jar next to the chia seeds and almonds. You might be adding them to pasta or pesto without realizing the risks. And it's not about fear, it's about awareness. So here's what I did. I switched them out. I now use sunflower seeds or roasted pumpkin seeds. They give me the same crunch, the same satisfaction, but without the aftertaste or the side effects. They're cheaper, safer, and easier to digest. And if you've ever looked at your food and wondered why it suddenly doesn't taste right anymore, maybe it's time to take a closer look at what you've been sprinkling on top. Tasting good is one thing, but what if your liver and gallbladder can't keep up with it? Back when I thought I had my daily routine figured out, I used to treat myself to a small bowl of macadamia nuts every morning after breakfast. They were rich, creamy, just the right kind of indulgence that made me feel like I was still living well in retirement. I'd read somewhere that they were loaded with good fats and antioxidants, and I thought, well, why not? I'm not eating chips or cookies. This is a healthy snack, right? A few weeks into that new habit, I started feeling a dull ache near the right side of my waist. It wasn't sharp, just a nagging discomfort like something wasn't quite settling inside. I chalked it up to old age. Maybe my lower back acting up again. Maybe the stiffness from sitting too long reading in the afternoons. But the ache didn't go away. And then one evening, it got worse. Not unbearable, but enough to keep me from sleeping well. That's when I finally called my doctor and got checked out. After a round of tests, we found something I didn't expect. My gallbladder was under stress. Nothing serious yet, but clearly reacting to the high intake of saturated fat. That's when it hit me. Those buttery macadamias I had been eating weren't doing me any favors. 1 ounce of macadamias has over 200 calories and 22 grams of fat. And the kind of fat they carry isn't all heart-friendly. In fact, for people our age, it can quietly raise LDL cholesterol and trigger inflammation that often goes unnoticed until it becomes something bigger. What surprised me most was learning how common this is among older adults. As we age, our metabolism slows. Our gallbladders don't function as smoothly. And according to some studies, about 15% of people over 60 have silent gallstones they don't even know about. Add a steady stream of macadamia fats on top of that, and it's like pouring oil on a smoldering fire. Looking back, I realize I was seduced by the idea of fancy, healthy snacking. Macadamias felt premium. They looked elegant in the bowl, but my body didn't care about the price tag or presentation. It just couldn't process all that richness anymore. So I made a change. If I wanted something creamy, I turned to avocado slices in my salad. If I wanted crunch and heart-healthy fats, I started using walnuts instead. They're much gentler on the body and packed with omega-3s, which my doctor says I need more of anyway. So ask yourself this, my friend. Would you rather keep indulging in a rich flavor that may quietly wear down your organs, or switch to something that helps your heart and liver breathe a little easier? At our age, a small choice like this isn't just about taste. It's about giving your body the respect it's earned after all these years. We don't need more sugar in our lives, but cashews give us plenty of it anyway. There was a time when I kept a little glass jar of salted cashews on the side table in my reading room. Every afternoon, I'd settle into my recliner with a book and let my hand wander to that jar without thinking. They were soft, easy to chew, not too salty, just the right kind of snack to keep me company as I flipped through pages. I figured they were better than cookies or crackers. They're nuts, right? Healthy enough. What I didn't realize back then was how quickly those little handfuls were pushing my blood sugar in the wrong direction. Cashews may seem innocent, but they pack nearly 9 grams of carbohydrates in every ounce. And with a high glycemic index, they hit your bloodstream fast. For someone like me, who was already borderline pre-diabetic, that was more dangerous than I wanted to admit. I didn't connect the dots until my next checkup. My doctor looked at my A1C numbers and raised an eyebrow. It had climbed higher than ever before. I hadn't changed my diet much. No new desserts, no soda. But then I thought about those cashews. That quiet, sweet crunch I had been having every day. Turns out, those little golden crescent moons weren't just sneaky with sugar. They were also low in fiber and high in oxalates, compounds that bind to calcium in your gut and make it harder for your body to absorb it. At our age, where every bit of bone density counts, that's no small thing. And there's more. Oxalates can also contribute to kidney stones, something I had never dealt with before but didn't want to start now. It's funny how something that feels so gentle, so easy on the teeth, can be so hard on the rest of your body. The truth is, a lot of folks our age fall for the same illusion I did. We assume that because cashews are soft and tasty, they must be safe. We like that they don't require much chewing. But that smooth texture hides a sharp spike in sugar and a quiet threat to our bones and kidneys. So I made the swap. These days, I snack on dry roasted almonds instead. They're crunchier, sure, but they've got more fiber, less sugar, and they actually help with bone health thanks to their magnesium and calcium content. I take my time chewing them. And in a way, that pause helps me slow down and enjoy the moment more too. So let me ask you something, friend. Would you rather keep choosing what's soft and easy now, or start building the kind of strength that lets your bones and kidneys thank you 10 years from today? At our age, the answer might be simpler than we think. Are you eating a nut that's not actually a nut? For the longest time, I started every morning the same way. 2 slices of whole wheat toast, a light spread of natural peanut butter, a cup of black coffee. It was my little routine. Simple. Familiar, comforting. I liked that it felt healthy. The peanut butter label said natural, no added sugar, no oils I couldn't pronounce, just roasted peanuts and salt. What could be wrong with that? It wasn't until a regular blood test caught something off that I began asking questions. My doctor noticed that my INR levels were out of range. I take warfarin to manage a heart condition, and when your INR goes too low, your blood thickens. Too high and you risk bleeding. Mine had been steady for years, until that month. So we reviewed my meds, no changes, my activity, same as always. Then we got to food, and that's when he paused. He asked if I'd been eating more peanuts lately. I said yes. That natural peanut butter had become a staple. He sighed and explained what I wish I'd known years ago. Peanuts aren't even nuts. They're legumes. They grow underground. And because of that, they're more prone to contamination by a mold that produces aflatoxin. Aflatoxin is a toxin that can damage the liver over time, especially in older adults whose detox systems are already slowing down. That was the first shock. The second came when we talked about inflammation. Peanuts are packed with omega-6 fatty acids. Not inherently bad, but when your diet is already high in omega-6 and low in omega-3, it creates an imbalance. That imbalance leads to chronic inflammation. For someone over 65, that means joint pain, sluggishness, even brain fog. And then there's the vitamin K issue. Peanuts are rich in it, which is usually a good thing. Unless you're on blood thinners like me, that's when it becomes dangerous. And you know what's tricky? The word natural on the label makes us feel safe, like we're making a clean choice, but natural doesn't mean harmless. Especially not for people like us who have to think twice about every bite we take. I'm not saying peanut butter is evil, but it's not as innocent as it looks. These days, I've made a switch. I spread almond butter on my toast instead. No salt, no added oils, just slow roasted almonds ground down to a creamy paste. It's got fewer omega-6s, less mold risk, and it plays much nicer with my medication. Took a few days to get used to the taste, but now I don't miss the peanuts one bit. So let me ask you, friend, do you really want to keep starting your day with something that could be quietly working against your health? Or would you rather make a small change that keeps your blood flowing safely and your liver breathing easy? At our age, little choices like that aren't so little anymore. I used to think medicine was the only thing that could lower my blood pressure, until I started eating exactly 49 pistachios a day. It all started when my doctor gently told me that my numbers were creeping up again. Nothing too alarming, but enough to remind me that age has its way of pressing on the heart. I was already on a low dose of blood pressure meds, watching my salt, walking every morning. But still, something wasn't quite working. And honestly, I didn't want to increase my dose unless I had to. So I went back to the drawing board, the fridge, and the pantry. I started looking at every bite I put into my body. That's when I came across a study talking about pistachios, not just as a snack, but as a food that could actually help stabilize blood pressure. 1 ounce has around 285 milligrams of potassium. And potassium, as I soon learned, helps your kidneys flush out excess sodium. That process makes it easier for the heart to relax, for blood vessels to stay open, for pressure to ease off the walls. So I gave it a try. 49 pistachios a day, that's about 1 ounce. No salt, lightly roasted, half-open shells to make the cracking easy. At first it felt like a silly ritual, sitting there every afternoon cracking shell after shell. But you know what happened? After 2 weeks I noticed I was sleeping better. My eyes didn't feel as dry when I woke up. I didn't get those little afternoon headaches like I used to. And at my next appointment, my blood pressure had dipped just enough to make my doctor smile. Turns out, pistachios are also full of lutein and zeaxanthin, 2 antioxidants that protect your eyes from age-related degeneration. I'd been rubbing artificial tears into my eyes for months, but with these little green gems I started blinking easier, reading longer, less squinting, less strain, and the best part, the shells, you see, cracking each one slows you down, makes you pay attention. You don't shovel them in by the handful like other snacks. You savor them, and those empty shells piling up in the bowl, they remind you how much you've eaten. That little visual cue helps with portion control, without ever feeling like a diet. Most older folks I talk to say they don't like pistachios because they're too much work, too small, too fiddly. But I think that's the beauty of them. At our age, we could all use a reason to slow down, to sit, to focus on something simple and good. So what would you rather do, my friend? Crack a few shells each day and give your heart a break, or keep fumbling with pill bottles hoping your numbers hold steady? I'll take the handful of pistachios every time. It's a little habit that's turned into one of the most helpful parts of my daily routine. A 1/4 cup of almonds a day. I call that my bone insurance. It wasn't a dramatic fall, just a simple slip in the kitchen. I had spilled a bit of water on the floor, turned too quickly, and my foot gave way. I landed hard on my side. The pain shot through my hip like a bolt of lightning. I thought maybe it was just a bruise, but when I tried to stand, I knew something wasn't right. A few hours later, the X-ray confirmed it. A hairline fracture in my hip. The doctor said it was minor, but at my age, any fracture is a big deal. That day was a turning point for me. I started asking questions I hadn't asked before. What was I doing to protect my bones? What could I do better? That's when I came across the power of almonds. I had always thought of them as a healthy snack, nothing more. But turns out, they're rich in calcium and magnesium, 2 nutrients that work hand in hand to keep bones strong and steady. Magnesium is especially important because it helps move calcium where it belongs, in your bones, not your arteries. I started adding a 1/4 cup of almonds to my morning routine. Sometimes I'd toss them into a bowl of oatmeal. Other times I'd just eat them plain with my tea. After a few weeks I began to notice little things. I felt less stiff when I got out of bed. My digestion improved too. I wasn't reaching for antacids like I used to. But I also learned that almonds come with a small warning. They can be tough to chew, especially if your teeth aren't what they used to be. I made that mistake early on, popped in a few too fast and ended up coughing at the table. Not a fun moment. So now I take my time. If I'm feeling cautious, I crush them a bit with the back of a spoon or blend them into yogurt. You still get all the benefits without the risk of choking. What surprised me most was how such a small habit brought me peace of mind. I wasn't doing anything extreme. I wasn't buying expensive supplements or changing my whole diet. just a handful of almonds. But knowing I was giving my body what it needed to rebuild, especially after that fall, made all the difference. So tell me, friend, would you rather keep hoping your bones hold up or do something small each day to help them stay strong? A little almond goes a long way, especially when you eat it with intention and gratitude. One Brazil nut each morning was enough to change my whole mood for the day. There was a stretch of time last year when I felt like I was walking through fog. Not sad exactly, just tired, sluggish. I'd sleep a full 8 hours but still wake up feeling drained. My clothes started fitting tighter even though I wasn't eating more. My energy dipped. My thoughts felt heavier. I told myself it was probably just getting older, but something inside kept whispering that it might be more than that. Eventually, I went in for a checkup and asked for a full thyroid panel. The results showed that my thyroid was underactive, nothing dangerous, but just enough to explain everything I had been feeling. The doctor mentioned a few treatment options. We talked about supplements, medications, but then he mentioned selenium, a mineral that supports thyroid hormone production and helps with metabolism and energy balance. That caught my attention. I went home and did my own digging. Turns out Brazil nuts are one of the richest natural sources of selenium on Earth. Just one nut contains about 96 micrograms. That's 137% of the daily requirement. I was skeptical at first. One nut that small, but I figured I had nothing to lose. I started with just one each morning. Slowly, consistently. Within a few weeks, something shifted. My energy came back. I didn't feel like I was dragging myself through the day. My mood was lighter. I was more alert. Even my digestion improved. It felt like someone had turned the lights back on inside me. But I also learned an important lesson. You can have too much of a good thing. Eating 5 or 6 Brazil nuts a day might sound harmless, but too much selenium can actually cause hair loss, stomach trouble, or worse. That's why I stick to just one. Maybe 2 if I feel I need it. No more. And I always buy the kind still in their shell, keeps them fresh longer. I store them in the fridge and treat them almost like medicine. Natural, gentle, but powerful. Looking back, I'm glad I trusted my gut and paid attention to the little signs. We often think we need big changes to fix how we feel. But sometimes it's just about giving our body one missing piece it's quietly been asking for. So let me ask you, friend, would you rather keep guessing with a cabinet full of pills and powders, or start your morning with one small nut that speaks the language of your body? At our age, smart simplicity is sometimes the best medicine we've got. Maybe I've forgotten a lot of things over the years, but thanks to walnuts, I remember who I am. There was a time not long ago when I found myself searching for words mid-sentence. I'd walk into a room and forget what I came for. Names slipped out of my mind like steam from a kettle. It scared me more than I wanted to admit. I started writing notes to myself, leaving little reminders on the fridge. My daughter called it harmless forgetfulness, but to me, it felt like pieces of myself were slowly drifting away. That's when I stumbled on a study about walnuts and brain health. I had always known they were shaped like a brain, but I never thought that was anything more than coincidence. Turns out, walnuts are packed with alpha-linolenic acid, a plant-based omega-3 that helps keep the membranes of brain cells soft and functional. They're also rich in polyphenols that fight inflammation in the brain and melatonin to support better sleep. And sleep, I've learned, is not just rest, it's repair, so I made a new habit. Every night before bed, I'd eat 7 walnut halves, sometimes 9 if I was feeling generous. I didn't add salt, didn't roast them, just plain walnuts. And slowly, almost quietly, things began to shift. I started sleeping deeper, dreaming again, waking up feeling more refreshed. The fog that had lingered in my thoughts began to lift. I felt more like myself, more present. There was a mistake I made early on, though. I used to peel off that thin skin around the walnut. I thought it was bitter and unnecessary, but I later found out that the skin contains most of the antioxidants. That little touch of bitterness was the very thing protecting my brain, so I stopped peeling. I learned to appreciate the flavor, even enjoy it. What surprised me most was how something so small could bring back something so big. It wasn't magic, just nature doing its quiet work, helping me reconnect with memories, with moments, with names I hadn't said out loud in years. So let me ask you, friend, would you rather keep avoiding a bit of bitterness or face the bitterness of forgetting who you used to be? 7 walnut halves each night might not seem like much, but for me, they've become a ritual of remembering, a quiet gift I give myself. And honestly, I think it's one of the kindest things I've ever done for my mind. I suppose if there's one thing I've learned from sharing all this with you, it's that small things really do matter more than we think. A handful of the wrong nuts almost cost me my sleep, my memory, and the comfort I once took for granted in my own body. But a handful of the right ones helped me get it all back. I'm not here to preach. I've made my mistakes. I've eaten the wrong things for far too long because I thought they were healthy, because the label said natural, because I liked the taste. But now, sitting here with this warm cup of tea and a clearer mind than I've had in years, I know that one little choice each day adds up. You don't have to throw out your entire pantry. You don't need to become a health nut overnight. You just need to begin with one simple change, one thoughtful swap, one better choice. Maybe it's trading the peanut butter for almond butter. Maybe it's cracking a few pistachios instead of reaching for chips. Or maybe, like me, it's eating 1 Brazil nut in the morning and 7 walnut halves at night. I hope that in some way this little story helps you, or someone you love. If you know someone who's quietly struggling with fatigue or memory, or just not feeling like themselves lately, send this video to them. You never know what a small reminder can do. You might just help them sleep better tonight, or think a little clearer tomorrow. And if you found this helpful, I'd love to have you join me in the next video, where we'll talk about the foods that fight inflammation without medication. But for now, I'll leave you with this thought. You don't have to change your whole life. Just start with one nut, the right one.